things weren't really going really well for me. I was getting feedback from my manager that I wasn't meeting expectations, and this kind of blew my mind because my whole life I'd been a big achiever, right? Like, who here considers themselves like a recovering achiever, like someone who just like loves to do a lot of stuff at once, right? Like, who doesn't, right?
Were you a hyperachiever?
Yeah, I would say I just did a lot. So what I did was, I lived in New York City with all the type A's as well, and got my MBA with Deepika, and then I was rowing very competitively and won 6 national championships. And then, I moved to San Francisco and worked at Google and bought my place there. And I just felt like I was unstoppable. But then all of a sudden I was getting this feedback that I wasn't cutting it. And for the life of me, I was like, I don't understand what's happening. I can do anything I put my mind to. And what ended up happening was I really realized I just wasn't present. Meaning I was always thinking about the past, thinking like, like I wish I'd said this in the meeting, or why didn't I say this in the presentation, or I felt like an idiot. Why did I say that? The guy looked at me funny. Or I was thinking about the future. Like, I was thinking in my mind about all the things on my to-do list. Who has that mental list where you're like, okay, don't forget that. I gotta keep that in my mind. And I would be making this mental list. So I was thinking about what I needed to do next. I was thinking about, the emails that I needed to get back at 3 p.m. on Sunday, because I knew my manager would respond right away if I wrote her back right away, and so forth. And that left very little room and time to know, well, how am I doing, right? Like, how am I feeling? What's going on with me? Maybe there's some fear there and anxiety that compels me to keep doing things in this way. And so one day my manager just sat me down, and she had good intentions for me. She said, Rachel, I don't know if this job is a fit for you. You might want to consider doing something else. And to me, that was like a huge wake-up call, because it really hit home that I couldn't keep going in the way I was going. But I still was very frustrated and upset, because I didn't know what was going on. Because here I am, I was doing all these things, and all of a sudden just stuff, it was like the wheels were falling off. And I felt like the more I heard that message, the more I felt like I was in a tailspin. So for example, I would go through all of those things in my head, like, if I'd said this in the meeting, and then I felt terrible. Like, I felt fear. I felt like I was in a spin cycle. I couldn't get out. Every day I'd walk to work down on Spear Street, going to Google, and I'd be like, today's a new day. Like, I'm gonna prove them wrong. Like, I'm gonna do great. And then around 2 p.m., I'm laughing because it's like, it happened every day. I'm like, I can't do it. I got feedback, or someone like, I just felt like someone was looking and judging me funny, and then I was right back where I was, feeling that spin cycle. Has anyone ever felt like that, or just relates to that at all?
I was going to ask you, so before that, did you feel like you liked what you did, or did you feel like you didn't really like it?
Yeah, I did like what I did. I love technology, and I also was in a newish role. So I was in a role for about 6 months when things started to not work out well. So I think it was a combination of things. I was managing a team. I was a first-time manager pretty much. And I had the new manager, who was this person who was trying to help me. So I just couldn't figure it out. So I went home that Friday after that talk, like riding my bike home on the big hills of San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I called a friend who basically, said, well, doesn't Google have a sabbatical program? And it was like a light bulb went off in my head, because I had no idea that even existed. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'll have to look into that. And so sure enough, I researched it, and they did have a leave of absence program. You have to apply and get approved. So that weekend I spent researching it and writing up a case, because I'd been there a couple years. I'd come in from a company that was acquired for I was there 7 years. And I made my case and said, hey, I really want to take an unpaid break. And 90 days was the most you could take. So it was unpaid, and that's very fortunate. Most companies don't even allow that, right? And only 11% of companies actually have any type of program that is a unpaid or a paid leave, and 4% have paid. So it's like very little, that has that. I got approval, and so I took off 3 months from Google to really just figure out what was going on. Like, I didn't know, and instead of doing the normal things, which I would have done, so the normal things, you can probably guess what they were. It was like filling up my schedule, making travel plans, just keeping myself busy. All of these things, I decided that's not going to work this time. And I had no training in any of this that I do now. Like, I had no training in emotional intelligence. I didn't have any mindfulness or meditation training. all I knew was like my MBA and rowing and all the things I'd learned on the job. And so I really took those 3 months to learn about myself. And it was the first time I really took literally like this forced pause I was on, I call it a forced pause, to assess what was going on. And what I realized was it wasn't the job, it wasn't my manager, I was the common denominator, right? So that's why I kind of took myself out of the game, because I figured if I leave and quit and go do something else right away, like it was just something inside of me, and I just felt that this is going to happen again. Like, I don't know why, but my guess is I probably end up in the same predicament. So I knew something had to be different. And so, I did go back to Google because I wasn't sure I'd go back. I was considering quitting, but I realized Google's a pretty good place. I align with their values and they have things to offer me, and I just wasn't aligned with the job. And so, going back to if I liked my job, I realized the strengths that I had weren't necessarily in the job I was doing, which was more operational. And so I realized, I asked friends